And we are live with another Elite Coach Live. Hope we are well, guys. And I am joined by the SE founder and chairman, Mr. Brendan Chaplin. How we doing, mate?
Really good, thanks, Steve. Yeah, just explaining off camera there how a bit under the weather this week, and maybe I didn't have the minimal effective dose. I think I might have had the maximal dose of lots of things whilst I was away for a week or two, burning the candle at both ends. But back now and raring to go, mate, as always.
Awesome stuff, mate. And like I say, when you, it's always I think it's always a bit of a, damn it, I did it. You know, you always try and get too close. You always try and have too much, spread yourself too thin. And when it comes to bite you back, it's more of a, yes, you don't feel great, but also it's that, crap.
Well, you know, I don't know about you, Steve, but like when I'm on holiday with the family, I actually didn't really have more time to exercise, and I do a lot of running. I do get out, not necessarily fast running or anything like that, but I tend to accumulate some good volume. But at the same time, you're going out for dinner, you've got some alcohol going through your system. And so what I often find is towards the end of the time away, you do feel under recovered because you're also then with the kids, you're eating and drinking a bit, you're exercising. And actually, when you get back, you're kind of like, now I can recover a little bit, which is sort of the opposite of the intended holiday goal. But, you know, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why so often you hear of like people saying, I need a holiday to get over the holiday.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
It happens so much, but yeah, I think that just it goes to show you had some good times though, mate. You know. So, but guys, as always, as you are joining us, Natalie's joined us there. Say hello,
Hey,
drop
Natalie.
a comment, let us know what has been happening, guys. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but at the moment I'm on fire. I'm in a really, really good space. I've got my morning rituals, my evening rituals. I'm smashing through. I've got a really, really good structure. So that's going really well.
Me, then.
Pardon?
Like the opposite.
This is yin and yang. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is two sides of the coin right here. But part of that is one thing is you guys fueling myself with your wins, your take, what you've learned, what's your biggest wins, etc., etc. So if you can share in the comment section what has been your biggest win so far this week, let me know. We did a live session. We had over 60 attendees last night on an immersion session, and we had people talking about new clients, hitting new PBs, and all of that. It was just really cool to see. So if you want to drop them into your context,
isn't it? And for those of you listening in as well, so Steve often shares your wins, your messages with us, and we have another WhatsApp group, SCE staff internal. And honestly, when I get those screenshots or just feedback from Steve, it's brilliant. It's the best part of my day, and it's the same for the business. It's why we do what we do, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, and it just makes it, like you say, it's really cool to see. Do you know? And this is great one here from Natalie. Do you know? This is what we love to see. This is why we do what we do, right? Client breakthroughs, finding the right key. That is a win. That'll fuel my day right now. So Natalie, thank you very much for sharing that. That's amazing.
Any questions, guys, as well, please do type them in, because I'm often conscious. I don't. Sorry to interrupt, Steve, but I'm often conscious that we have a topic here, and we'll go through it and give you some great value. I hope, but also we're here to serve you guys as well. So if you've got a question, if you've got a challenge that Steve and I can help you with, please do type it in the comments box. It doesn't have to be related to this. We'll pick it up at some point, won't we, Steve?
Absolutely. Here's another one from Andy. Let's do comps in this season. All athletes remain injury-free. Looking forward to the league and upcoming championships. You know,
Brilliant.
it's testament to a really good program, isn't it? You know, awesome
It is.
stuff.
Yeah, good work,
Love
mate.
it, love it, love it. So, guys, today we're going to be chatting about. We talk about this a lot at SCE, and we talk about within our training programs, and we discuss it in business and everything else like that. It's this term, the minimal effective dose, and I love it because what it does is it forces coaches to evaluate their training sessions. It forces them to evaluate what they do on a regular basis with their clients, their athletes, etc., and their actions. But I want to break it down today because I think there's some misconceptions about minimal effective dose, and I think it always goes to the minimal bit. So I want to kind of break it down and just say, right, there's ways that you need to apply this, and there's ways that you need to view it, and the minimal part of it is it only works following by the effective bit. So we'll dig into that a little bit. But Brendan, from your point of view, mate, what does minimal effective dose mean to you, mate? How has it been a biggest application for yourself, mate?
So it's a critical part of program design, full stop. And I think for me, it's led by something else, which is, what is the adaptation that you seek in the client or the group or the team that you're working with? And if we lead with that question of what is the adaptation that we seek here, then the minimal effective dose becomes much more manageable or easier to digest and understand. So what often happens, let's start on the other side, is we lead with a program, we lead with an exercise. We want to do squats, we want to do a balanced program, for example, squat, hinge, push, pull, and we look at, say, well, what's a good rep range then for squats, or so on and so forth. And that can lead to sets and reps being written down on a sheet, work being done, and maybe competence being gained through that exercise. You get better at squats, for example. But if you lead with a different question, which is, we are trying to build lower limb strength here in this group, in this individual athlete, what is the best stimulus to achieve that? And once we've achieved it, once we've introduced a stimulus, that's it. It's done. So the minimal effective dose is critical, because you got to remember that S&C training, whatever we do, is simply one part of somebody's day, somebody's week. If they're a competitive athlete, they've got so many other things going on, Steve. So they've got their skill-based training, they've got their technical development, and so on and so forth. They've got their game prep. They've got so many other meetings, seeing nutritionalists, what have you. If you're training a general public client and they've got a job to go to, they've got kids to look after, they've got all the stresses of the day, the week. So our job is to achieve the desired outcome, whatever that adaptation is, in the minimal effort required possible. And we've got to be strong on that. It's not about the most or the hardest work. And let's also remember that you get the adaptation not in the gym, when you're at home, when you're asleep, when you're recovering. So the gym work makes you less fit. The recovery makes you more fit. And that's a critical point here to remember. So what we really want to do is give them a dose of work to elicit an adaptation. They go home, they recover, and then they come back in the gym. And one more point I think is critical here as well, and this is a mistake that I've made many, many times. I'm sure you have, and I'm sure everybody watching will have. The goal for me is that at the end of the session, the client, the athlete, the team wants more. And it's so much more effective to leave a little bit of work in the tank to come back the next day, to create the desire to come back. Because if we don't do that, we actually do the opposite. We smash people, and then they either don't want to or they can't come back. There's too much soreness. There's too much DOMS, whatever. So the goal here is we want to keep a high level of emotional engagement in the program as well. Give them some things to think about when they go home. Give them some questions to answer when they come in the gym. And real anecdotal one for me, I mentioned I do quite a bit of running. Well, quite a bit for me would be anything from 10 to 20k in one go, and sort of 2, 3, 4 times a week. And so I came back came off the plane on Friday last week and didn't feel great. So I decided to go for a run, gentle run, and ended up, I mapped out a route in my head and ended up doing 15k. And if I'm brutally honest, I was totally cooked by 7 or 8k. I was tired. I'd been on the plane. The kids were in bed. It was an early evening run. And so I really should have canned it, maybe no more than 10k, but possibly even 7 or 8k. The speeds were there. The triggers were showing me I'm cooked. I pushed it to 15. I felt really heavy and almost pain through that last 5k. And guess what happened? I basically couldn't train for like 3, 4, 5 days. And I'm only really getting into it now. I did 6k last night. Almost a week has gone by. How many times have we made that mistake as coaches where we push somebody or even ourselves too hard, and you end up having to take more time off? And really, it would have been so much more effective to have banked 7k, on Sunday done another 8 or 9 or 10, and then yesterday I might have done 15 but done it really well. Do you know what I mean? And it's a case in point that was not effective dosage ultimately. Do you get my point?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think this is what we were chatting about last night in the session. It's taking the in-session view, but also the helicopter view of saying, so for example, if you canned it at 7 and then you did another 7 the next day and then a 15, your weekly volume is then actually double what you're able to achieve. Right, you pushed it so hard in one session, you've actually halved your total weekly volume. And if we know anything from training, it's actually total weekly volume or total monthly volume, which actually gets you the results that you need. If you're looking at hypertrophy, the most effective programs typically the ones that allow you to get greater levels of volume within a week. We look at strength training, we basically grease the groove. If you want to talk about what Pavel talks about, those sorts of things, it's doing it frequently enough where you get that neurological response all of the time. The thing that I want to kick into this, guys, is although we're talking about the minimal effective dose, it's not just doing stuff once and think that's it. It's satisfied for the week. It's doing enough which allows you to then do it multiple times, and you have to do it multiple times consistently all of the time. I speak to a lot of coaches and they're saying, "Oh, minimal effective dose, so I've done squats and then I'm doing an upper body," and it's just that kind of push-pull split. But I'm just like, your weekly volume isn't there. Yeah, but I'm doing a minimal effective dose. I'm like, you've misconstrued it. although it's minimal effective dose, it's minimal effective dose within that session, which allows you to then do it more frequently, consistently over the long term. You can't just do one thing and then forget about it for a week and then think that's enough. It might be, it may be, but typically it's probably not. When you take this approach, you've got to make sure that you're leaving stuff in the tank so then you can go for the frequency and you go for the consistency. Because I think the biggest realization for me lately is actually frequency is one of the things that sets my athletes, my own training apart. If we've scaled everything down, cut it down from kind of 90-minute, 1 hour sessions to 45-minute sessions, but the frequency's doubled, but we're actually HRV, all of our resting heart rates increasing, all of our markers are increasing, and performance is increasing, all of that kind of stuff. And that was a realization of, yes, that dose response was, although we're training hard 3 times a week, we're tripling the volume now, getting 9 to 12 sessions in a week, but actually that's paying off in the long term as well. And I want to break that down into business and whatever it is that you're doing in your coaching business as well, because I think a lot of people say, yeah, but Steve, I put a Facebook ad and nobody responded. It's like, I'm going for the minimal effective dose. I don't want to irritate people by posting all the time. It's like, no, you know, I've read one page, I've read one journal. No, that's not it. It's enough to stretch you and push you, but you can always do more. But then you've got to rinse and repeat. You've got to rinse and repeat. This isn't like a one-off thing. This is like your multivitamin all of the time. It's taking a multivitamin every single day, which is the right dosage that isn't going to give you illness or bad belly or whatever it may be, but you've got to do it every single day to get the benefits over the long term, you know?
Yeah, I think just going back to training and adaptations for a second, I think the key point there is what stage is the client or athlete at and what is realistic for them. So for example, you know, most team sport athletes would certainly in season would always struggle to get more than, say, 2 good exposures to stimulus and intensity in there. However, you can absolutely get good adaptations with 2 well put together doses of training through the week. And actually, for most team sport athletes and athletes in general that I worked with and still work with some of the tennis players and the fighters and so on and so forth, I still work with 2, ideally 3, try to get 3, but 2. And the simple fact is they're not advanced strength trained athletes. They're actually, even though they might be a professional athlete or they might have 10 years of accumulated training, they're not advanced when it comes to strength training. They're not power lifters that are managing really, really high loads in that way. But the difference is that you've got training units. If you look at one dose as a unit of training, same with a speed session, same with a plyometric session, same with a technical session and this and that, over the course of the week, they may have 25, 30 different units of training. So there's still a lot in there in the program. But I agree that ultimately what we need to be thinking about with minimal effective dose is in that session, what do we need to do? How do we stimulate the system in a way that leaves us coming back for more? And I agree that we need exposure to intensity and to volume. And where I'd point people on this, and maybe we can leave a link, is check out Prelepin's table, Prelepin's chart. And it's a strength training or power-based training piece of work but basically what you'll see on that, you can Google it, of course. What you'll see on that is the dosage recommended dosage to achieve set outcomes, strength and growth in power is a lot lower than perhaps you might think. And in reality, when you're lifting heavy loads, and this is based on Olympic weightlifting, but if you can use it for maximal strength training, you really do not need to have exposure to a large amount of volume to facilitate that adaptation. In fact, if you look at it here, I'm just going to look at it in front of me now. You know, the suggested total reps in a session, when you're working at that 90% and above, is seven reps at 90% or above, no more than that. That's an optimal load, optimal exposure, repetition wise, when you're working at that 90% or above. Well, you know, 3 sets of 5 is 15. Now, reality is 5 reps is probably not 90% and above. But if you're doing good quality reps, and this is the key point here, is always leave a little bit in the tank, and you want quality. You want that rep to be quality. You want to drive out the hole in the squat, or you want to move through the range with really good quality, really good intent. And simply, you cannot do that when you're more fatigued than that. And it's much better, in my eyes, to do some really good quality work on day 1 and then come back on day 2 or day 3 and do a really good exposure and dose as well, Steve. And I think that's where you're getting at, isn't it? I mean, that Prilepin stable is not necessary. It's really for power-based Olympic weightlifting. So you could nudge it up a little bit when you're talking about metabolic strength gain, and certainly up a little bit more when it comes to sort of hypertrophy, and you can adapt this yourself. But it's a really good contextual, puts this whole discussion into context when you think about doing 7 reps in a session. And last point, and I promise it will be the last point, we'll move on. The best coaches get this. When you look at what the best coaches in the world are doing, they get this. It is all about not the session, it's the next session, the next week, the next phase. It's well planned and it's well coached. And what I mean by that is the session finishes when the quality is compromised. And the best coaches, when you look at the trends amongst the best coaches, they all get minimal effective dose. You don't get anybody that questions that and doesn't administer that on a daily, weekly basis, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the last important things to think about here is that the body doesn't work in silos and doesn't work just in, right, I've done strength, switches off and then gets on there. But when we look at overload and the stimulus that you're trying to get, we always recover at different rates. Different systems recover at different rates that you've always got. So you've got bits of residual fatigue and residual training effects that happen. So if you are working with people and you've got 1 or 2 sessions a week, think about, well, actually that training effect that you do there will actually then transfer into the sport-specific training session. So Brendan's MMA athletes get 1-2 sessions in a week. You know, I train with some guys that just train once a week. They're in fight camp at the moment. So what we do is in that session, but I know that the fact that that session that we do on the Saturday, the residual effects of when they go into sparring on the Monday and when they've got the faster type sparring, the shorter rounds, but it's more intense, it's actually going to have an effect and it's going to actually improve the performance there. So that, but what I can't afford is to leave too much residual fatigue in terms of peripheral fatigue, so muscle soreness, DOMs, etc., because that's going to have a negative impact. So it's all about that sequential on looking at it as well, you know. But it's a really, really important point, and I think Brendan, you covered it off great, and I think this is a great one from Andy here. You know?
Give us your thoughts on that then, Steve. That's so managing junior athletes who, I get this, Andy. I've been there, and they do want to train every day. They do want to do more and more and more, don't they? Steve, what's your advice there for Andy?
So for me, this is why I use RPE a lot and the RPE scales. And it's about educating these guys. So if they are going to train a lot, it's about, right, okay, that minimal effective dose, relating that to RPE. So it's like, right, you can train every day, but I want you to go at, right, Monday, you might go at RPE 8. Next day, you might go skills and drills, might be RPE of 5, 6. I don't want you to go above that. The next day, you're going to go at RPE 8 again. And as long as you're manipulating that in terms of their effort, that's one of the most important things for me. It does take time, but it's a really, really simple way of getting the parents involved and the child taking ownership of it. So we're looking at SDT, autonomy and competency, etc., etc. But that autonomy piece is really, really important. So you can even distill it down and say, right, we've got a red, amber, and a green day. So it's like, right, okay, on these sessions, I want you to go and do a green day. So if you're running for 5K, I want you to run a pace that you could run 10K at. And it's education on why. Because this day we're going to go for a red day. And this is when we're going to do our speed work or higher volume or whatever it may be. And that's really easy for parents to understand, because you can say, right, you wouldn't drive your car in the red zone all the time. What would happen? The engine would overheat. It would be going too fast. It wouldn't be able to handle corners. You're not going to do that. So that's a way of getting the parents involved. But also, I think a really important thing, and I always chuck this bit of research in, and I'll try and find the paper, Andy, and put it in. But it talks about motivation for youth athletes, and youth athletes only respond to certain people in different scenarios. They respond better. So when it comes to training and technical stuff, it goes coach, peers, and then parents. And then if a kid's thinking about leaving a sport or quitting, they'll go peers, parents, and then coaches. So it's understanding these things and getting the parents on board and just saying, listen, if you're trying to coach your kids, they're just going to take on a load of emotional baggage here. And if you're putting more emotional baggage on a youth athlete, that's all they'll ever be. They'll get to 15, 16, 17, 18, and they'll say, I'm done. You know, so it's about educating. I really use SDT in that, and I get parents to have a look at that chart and I explain it and just say, remember what your role is. Your role is there to support and nurture. You know, you're not the coach. So, but I digress on that a little bit. So I think the key thing is
that's really interesting.
That traffic light system is a really good way of doing it, because it's very, very simple. It's really, really basic to get down, and you can extrapolate good bits of data on it. You can look at what is a red day and how fast and how many runs they did and what they felt at the end of it. So you can put some metrics behind it. But yeah, just try that system, Andy, see how it goes. And for your own self, mate, I know for a fact you do take minimal effective dose to the extreme. So maybe train a little bit more, Andy.
I think the only thing I'd add to that, I think that's really, really good advice, is the classic, it depends. You know, junior athletes come in all different shapes and sizes, as do all athletes and all people, frankly. So what are we dealing with here? And if you look at, say, children, it would be unlikely that children and novice adolescents in the gym will approach their true intensity in sessions with you. And that doesn't even need to be the goal, unless you're dealing with 16-year-old rugby players who've had 3 or 4 years strength training, maybe rowers or endurance athletes that are doing high volume swim, that kind of thing. If you think, if we're dealing with team sport, football, tennis, cricket, etc., or if we're dealing with children, people who are, as a rule of thumb, under the age, not teenagers, it's unlikely they're going to approach their true loads, and you probably wouldn't even go there anyway. So I would say you don't need to be too concerned, as long as the 3 words that we said before: quality, purpose, and an intent. And if you have quality, and I think you've got to lead the session with that in mind. You've got to be an autocrat with young athletes, with young people. You have to be able to say, just 1 second, sorry. Someone's left a parcel. You have to be the force in the gym with young people, to be to set the tone, to give them a reference point, and from that reference point you can gradually give autonomy and more flexibility, in my opinion. So I think the question is, it depends, but I think if you're seeing people, like, so for example, I trained a lot of young tennis players from the age of sort of 7 up to 18 and then beyond, and they're involved in a program, and they're training in a regular basis. They might only do 2 strength sessions a week with you, but they're hitting, they're doing all sorts of other stuff. You can look at that and think, well, actually, Monday they might be doing intensive hitting. Tuesday they're in the gym with you. Wednesday you can do speed work, and it sort of fits into your traffic light system, really. In the speed and jumping and plyometric and agility work might be there, but it's different. It's a different adaptation that you're seeking, and quite often different is enough. As long as there's substantial difference in there, then it's sort of a deload in itself from that. It's when you're building work on top of work on top of work on top of work that you need to have a real think about the monitoring side for junior athletes. But yeah, it's an exciting project working with those youngsters, isn't it? And I think managing the parents and managing the other stakeholders in there, the coaches, is really relevant too.
Absolutely, and I think, like I say, there's a great. I'm trying to find it as we're chatting there, but I use it a lot. Is that the self-determination theory, and looking at the 3 tenets of what make up self-determination theory, and how what it influences and what has a positive impact, and then what undermines it. There's a really, really good chart, and I always explain that to parents, because then they have a grasp of understanding, this is why we say what we say, this is why we coach the way we coach, and they get to have an understanding of the full process of how they can have a positive impact on the environment, how they can have a positive impact on the feedback, and how they can have a positive impact on taking ownership of what it is they do. So that's a really, really important one there as well. So, but yeah, hopefully, guys, you found that useful in terms of minimal effective dose. And I mean, I always want to touch on the last little bit in terms of business, but I think obviously we've sort of tried and tested there. But minimal effective dose in terms of business, Brendan, what would you sort of say is the key things to consider with minimal effective dose here?
I think you mentioned it before. It's little and often, isn't it? It's working in a consistent way, and frequency is really, really relevant when it comes to that. So it depends on which element we're talking about here, but the obvious one that everybody will go to, I think, in terms of business, is social media posting. And your results gauge that, don't they? So you know, if you're watching this and you're not getting the results you want, then something has to change. The message has to change, doesn't it? And or the way that you send the message. And the first thing I'd say with marketing your business to get more inquiries, it doesn't change from those three words: quality, purpose, and intent. So if you think about going from, say, one post a week to one post a day, can you keep the quality in there? And what I mean by that is the purpose is, what is this trying to achieve? What is the goal of this post? Your quality is the thought, the effort, the ultimate piece of work that you've produced. And the intent is, what do you want people to do off the back of this? And if you can produce good work going from once a week to once a day, then do it, you know, or 3 times a week. If the next step is going from once a day to 3 times a day, and you can't do that, then don't do it, or find somebody who can help you to do that. But ultimately, I come in on this if you feel like I'm going on the wrong track here, Steve. But I see 2 issues with marketing as a rule of thumb. The biggest issue for me is actually more about the quality, purpose, and intent. In that, are you actually putting thought into what you're doing? Is it written for the person that you want to work with? Is it compelling? And are you doing the work around that? If you write a brilliant article on minimal effective dose, or how to lose fat, or how to gain strength for your population, tennis players, are you doing the work to then drive and direct people to that piece of work that you should be proud of off the back of that? So I think first and foremost, that's the question to ask. Secondly, if you can tick that box, then it very often would be about frequency off the back of that. You need to produce more. You know, people have so little time and so little attention these days. Why do you think that they will read your stuff in the 5 minutes they spend on Instagram before some program they want to watch comes on? You have to do the work to direct them to that and produce good quality information that is worthy of them reading, watching, and consuming. And if we think about the people that we follow, maybe you've got 2 or 3 YouTube channels that you go back to. You've got 4 or 5 Instagram profiles that you're happy to, you always go to, and so on and so forth. Why is that? You're interested. They're writing it for you. You know, how many times do we said, like Seth Godin, it's almost like he's watching you on a camera and making relevant interjections in your life. You know, think about that from your side, everybody, about the people that you're reading, the people that you're watching and consuming. They're writing, reading, recording, presenting to you. Well, are you doing that with your people? And how can you do that more effectively? So I think if you can tick the quality box, then it comes down to the frequency. And this is literally just social media, Steve, as well, or marketing, isn't it? But that's my thoughts on that in a snapshot.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was wanting to get out of this is that minimal effective dose is don't let it fool you. Don't let you think that you can get away from half dosing it or just doing little things. It's that key word, effective. You know, so making sure that you don't just take creatine once and then expect it to get all benefits. It's getting the effective dose. So if you are struggling with your social media, or you don't think you're getting much traction in your coaching business now, is that dose effective? Have you been doing it enough? And have you took it over a prolonged period for it to take the desired effect. I think that's kind of the key thing there with all of that.
You've got to give things a chance, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because we've talked about it before in previous ones. I think it was about 6 weeks ago. So going to the feed, we talk about, like say, giving it time and actually getting the data from that. If you don't do things for long enough, you won't get enough quality data to make an informed decision. So sometimes you've just got to let it run. You've got to stay consistent, and then you get to find out what works and what doesn't, rather than just doing once and then just ignoring it, you know. So I think that's the key thing that I want to take away from that, guys.
100%. So really important.
So, guys, as always, we love to serve you guys and give you guys what you need. And I think this weekend we've got a great offer on for you guys. It's 50% off the CPD, and it's building the complete athlete. And I think it ties in really, really well with minimal effective dose, because this bundle really does dissect what you need to do to build the complete robust athlete who can tackle anything, anywhere. And it's working with any athlete of any level as well. You can apply the principles within this, and it digs into kind of minimal effective dose and how you're going to really implement that into your training sessions as well, guys. So I really recommend jumping on that. And for you guys that are watching this, we have got a 50% off just for this week. And if you use the code complete50, you'll be able to grab that. I'm just going to put the link into the website where you can grab that this weekend and this weekend only. So make sure that you do check that out, guys, because it is a fantastic resource that I truly believe will make a big difference in your training, in your coaching at the moment as well, guys. So links in there. Remember, use the coupon code complete50 and you'll get 50% off that.
Nice.
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. So hopefully you found that helpful. If you've got any questions, get them answered now. If you haven't got any questions, I'm sure Brendan's ready for another cup of coffee and ready to smash his day. I know I'm ready for my next one, and I've already had one as well. So it's all good.
No, good session. Enjoyed that, Ste. And yeah, thanks everybody for your questions, for listening in. I hope you're doing really well. And yeah, give us some insights. What can we do better? What would you like a future Elite Coach Live session to be focused on and around? And we'll do our best to serve you, won't we, Steve?
Absolutely. We turn up for you guys. And one final bit, it really bug me if I don't get this up. So I'm just gonna get this up for Andy. Like I say, it will frustrate me if we don't. Yeah. But this is what we were chatting about before. Hopefully, guys, you can see that. I'll just hide this little bit here. So what we were chatting about with your youth athletes, this is self-determination theory. So this is an adaptation of Deci and Ryan's working. But as you can see, the 3 tenets that go into self-determination theory and motivation, you've got relatedness, so enhanced by respect, care, and inclusive environment. So this is the environment you create. Competency and autonomy. So that bit there is the bit we were chatting about before, Andy, in terms of autonomy. So obviously, if an athlete is training every day, typically they probably want to. So it's feeding that autonomy there, but it's giving the parents an understanding of how motivation is undermined. So having a look at those little things of threats and deadlines, imposed goals and control. If the parent has all of the control and says, you have to go and do this, you have to go and do that, that's going to undermine autonomy. And that's going to reduce chances of motivation. So I really would recommend checking out this chart. It's off from a really, really good research paper into adaptation and looking at that. So really do check out that. It's a great piece. And we dissect self-determination theory in the MSP as well. So hopefully that has helped you there, mate. Just needed to get that because I know it would frustrate me if I didn't.
Yeah.
So guys, We shall love yous and leave yous. Have an absolutely amazing weekend as always. And if you need anything, remember we are here to serve you guys, and you guys that are going out there and doing great things within your own communities and with your athletes. So we want to help support you. So if you need absolutely anything, please do reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. But until next week, guys, have a great one, and we'll catch up soon. Brendan, pleasure as always, mate. And I'll catch you on the flip side.
Thanks, everybody.